Howdy Spacers, and welcome back to BlankSpaceDolls, and Happy New Year! Sorry for the delay in videos. Now that the holidays are over, I hope to get back into my normal posting again, but let's not waste any more time and get right into the next custom. I used a deer as inspiration for this project, focusing on a fall color palette, layering, doe-like features, floral crowns, and horns or antlers as a creative choice. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe if you're new here and want to see more of my work. Now let's get started. Of course, you want to go in and prep the face by removing the factory paint with 100% acetone and removing the original hair. And I just go in with my watercolor pencils, which this time I'm actually trying out the Spectrum Aquablend watercolor pencil sets, and I have to say I actually quite like them, and this is not sponsored. And I'm using the color Ginger just to sketch out the initial details that I want on the face for the eyes, nose, and the lip. For the blushing, I'm going to go in with my Davenport palette Pastels, which I've talked about in a previous video, and I'm using the Birthday Soup palette, which comes in all these like neutral, natural tones, and I'm just going to begin shading in her eyeshadow a little bit just to give it a little bit of dimension, and I'll also do the same shading around her nose, mouth, and right underneath her bottom lip. I'm also quite often asked what kind of brushes I use for my doll face-ups as well, and I do use a combination of makeup brushes as well as brushes that you can get at like a normal hobby store, but most of the time I'm going to be using e.l.f. makeup brushes, but I also alternate between some Morphe. And then with the Spectrum Aquablend watercolor pencil, this is the Pearl White. I will say I did like it because it gives like a perfect faint white. I think it would be really good for highlighting on the face, but I did not like it for the whites of my eyes. You guys know I love my General's Pastel chalk pencil, so that is my tried and true ride or die best white pencil in my opinion. But then I'm going to go in with the black umber from the same brand and begin sketching in the finalized details that I like with the eyeliner and the bottom waterline, as well as you can see her nose and her upper lip have been done. I did go ahead and seal that layer with Mr. Super Clear Sealant, and then I am going in with my pastel chalk pencil, which you can see here just how much more opaque of color it gives you, and that's why I stand by it being my tried and true. And you can see it's getting a little bit short. I go through these pencils like crazy, but I went ahead and brought them in as reinforcements. Then I begin to sketch in her eyebrows using that same ginger color, and I'm just making these small triangular shaped eyebrows. I don't really want a full eyebrow because I wanted to go for a character effect, and you'll see me just sketching those small eyebrows in right here. And then I'm just going to fill those in completely and then seal it again. Here's what she looks like after being sealed a third time with Mr. Super Clear. And the fourth layer is where you begin to add the small details. And then in the final layer you can add the eye shines and all of the small white highlighting. I was really excited about the hair this time because I'm using this alpaca wool for the first time. I actually was sent this by one of my followers on Instagram, and it was ethically sourced. And I just think that it's so beautiful. I love the natural wave texture that it has to it. It just makes it so fluffy, and it just gives me the deer aesthetic that I was looking for. Moving on to the outfit, I'm actually going to be using this circle cut quilting template, and I've actually found that this helps me make perfect circular skirts for my dolls because the lengths are just right, and I'm actually making a full pattern so that way I can use it for future customs. So that's why you see all of the numbering and all these extra details, just so that way I have a pattern to use later. Now taking that pattern that we've just created, I'm going to place it on my top skirt fabric, and you can see I'm not placing it on the fold because I do want it to only wrap around halfway on the top skirt of the outfit, and I'm going to trace around that on the other side and cut that out. Then you want to go in and cut out the waist of the skirt. looking back, it does look like I cut the skirt on the fold, so what I'm also going to do is cut off like a cheese wedge piece of that, because like I said, I do want it to only reach halfway around the character that I'm creating, because this is going to be the top skirt. And then I just round those edges a little bit and then trim it with this gold trimming that I had in my stock box of fabric. Then I go ahead and pop that under my sewing machine and sew around the entire perimeter. Then I'm going to use that same skirt pattern that I created earlier and put it on the double fold of the fabric to create a larger circle skirt. And following the same steps as the previous layer, we're going to go ahead and cut out that waistband. Then I folded up the entire hemline at 1.5 centimeters to create a clean hem. And of course, to make that permanent, you want to pop that under your sewing machine. Once the hem is done, I go in and hand pleat or hand gather at the waistband just to make it a little bit smaller, so I ensure that it fits around her waist. Using saran wrap and masking tape, I begin to sketch out a pattern for my bodice portion of the dress, and I'm just going to cut out half of that using my X-Acto knife and adding that to the fold of a piece of paper and then cutting around that, and that's going to give you a perfectly symmetrical top. Once you've transferred that pattern piece onto fabric, you just want to ladder stitch up those V shapes, which are the dart lines that we made for the bodice portion, and you're going to add small seams coming from the bust line down to the back just to have it taper down a little bit more for a snugger fit. I felt like the top was a little too simple, so I went ahead and gathered some of these ruffles in yellow tulle to match, and I actually added that to the top of the bodice. Then I'm going to go ahead and attach that bodice to the waistband of the skirt that we created in the matching fabric, and you see here I'm leaving a little bit of excess on the edges just for seam allowance, and that's where the dress is going to close up in the back. And again, you want to just pop that under your sewing machine and go across that entire seam. Then I use some ribbon as hem tape to finish off those back edges before sewing those seams together. I really wanted this dress to have a lot of volume, so for the underskirt I decided to hand ruffle a full circle skirt. So I'm actually going to take this tulle fabric that I folded about 6 times and cut strips of tulle, and then I'm going to hand gather that and attach that to a circle skirt. Using that same pattern piece we created earlier, I'm going to cut out yet another circle skirt, and this is actually going to be my petticoat for underneath. And you can see this is what it looks like, or you can barely see, but I do have thinner strips of tulle and then a thicker strip, and the wider one I'm actually going to fold in half to add some dried flowers on the edges, and that'll be the final layer that we do at the very end. So you're going to take those thinner strips and go all the way around the center, and this is what that looks like. And you can see the bottom hem is still empty, but I'm actually going to fill that with these dry flowers. And they're actually paper flowers, I apologize, but that's what I'm going to insert into the bottom hem layer of the underskirt. And that should be visible from the outside, that's my goal. And once they're all in, you go around the entire hem of that again with your sewing machine to seal those in. Here's what that skirt looks like once it's fully sewn, and I love the way that this looks with the pale yellow, and then I just add some elastic to the waistband so I can just slip it on underneath her main dress. And something I'm doing very special for this project is I'm going to be sculpting some horns for her. I know normally female deers don't have horns, although it's not uncommon, but like I said, I wanted this to be a fantasy character, and I took a little creative liberty and I decided to give her some antlers or horns. And here I'm just drawing a larger pair and a smaller pair because I wanted to see which one I liked better, and I actually decided to go with the bigger one because I wanted to give her a floral crown, and I think the smaller ones might have been covered by the flowers that I chose. Basically, I'm just bending and folding the wire to kind of match the shape of the drawing that I've drawn on the paper, and then to bulk it up, I just wrap the wire around it a little bit before I start the sculpting. Here's what the inner frames of those antlers will look like, and I'm going to use my 2-part Apoxie Sculpt to begin to fill in the bulk of those antlers. And I do recommend using gloves whenever you're working with Apoxie Sculpt. I fortunately do not have a reaction to it, and I wash my hands before and immediately after using it, but I highly recommend using it cautiously. Here's what the completed antlers look like, and I added a pin to make it easy to stab into the head of the doll. And then I'm just going to go over that with some brown acrylic paint, and I'll actually add detail using different shades of brown paint just to give it a more weathered and natural look. And then after I do that, I do go in with a little bit of white and kind of dry brush it just to give the antlers a little bit more dimension. Here's what the finished antler looks like, and I did add a little bit of iridescent glitter just to give the horns a little bit more shine. It's time to make the most exciting portion of the outfit, and that is the floral crown. And I'm actually using this like wire floral that I got from the holiday section at Joann's, and it's just brown wire with white berries and little brown bells on it, which I think is so cute because not that the doll would ever move, but she has a little bell sound whenever you move her around, which I think is so cute. And I'm just using this as a structure base for the crown, but it also has like small little details that'll fill in any gaps that I have with the paper flowers. These are the flowers I'm going to be using to adorn the flower crown with, and I'm going to use all of the colors and sizes for added dimension. And I go in with my fine tip hot glue gun, and I start by adding the leaves first because those are going to stick out a little bit further, and I figure I wanted to have a little bit of green in the crown as well because the flowers are very neutral and white, so I wanted to have an additional contrasting color in there. Once the leaves are placed, I begin to go and place the flowers, and I'm mainly focusing around the perimeter first because then I add the horns onto the doll's head and that will secure the crown down, and then I fill in the rest of that while it's actually attached to her head. And it wouldn't be one of my customs if I didn't over embellish everything, so I added more details to the horns for a more whimsical look. For the shoes, I decided to go with these open-toed little booties, which I believe belong to Cerise Hood. I could be wrong, but I cover that in the same brown as I did for the horns. I paint in the white straps, and then I add a little acorn to the front of the shoe just for a little bit more wood forest, deer, I don't know, just for added detail. For the lashes this time, I decided to go with this natural brown just because it felt a little bit more softer than like a harsh black. And once those are dried, let's take a look at the final photos. Let's all give a warm welcome to Willow, my dough-inspired custom. I'm so happy with how her antlers and crown turned out. What was your favorite part of the process? Let me know in the comment section below. I would also like to give a special thank you to all of you for getting me to 10,000 subscribers. That's honestly insanely amazing, and I'm so happy you all have joined the growing Spacer family. Remember, you can always see my other creations on my Instagram, including my Christmas twins, by searching at BlankSpaceDolls, where in my world, there's always a blank space. Let's customize it together. Until next time, Spacers, see you soon.